Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Harris, and I'm a programmer with SF Doc Fest, and I'm really excited to be here this afternoon talking with some of the great people from the Faithful. And thank you all so much for being here this afternoon. If you want to just say a quick hello and introduce yourself and how you're connected to the film.
Thank you, Kayla. It's really so great to be here. I wish we were really there, but this is probably for the best since I'm in quarantine anyway. I'm Annie Berman, and I am the director of The Faithful.
I'm Sarah Higgy, and I guess different things. I came in as an editor, and then we had a real true collaboration. So my name shows up in a few different ways, but yeah, collaborator.
Hi, I'm Ralph Burns, and I am a photographer, and I was lucky enough to be included in this wonderful film by Annie and Sarah and all the other folks who put it together.
Wonderful. I think where I kind of wanted to start this conversation is sort of thinking about there's like a consistent reverence throughout the film, I think, for people's connection to these particular figures, but also their connection to the items that they have and the items that have been created. But also there's sort of this reverence for ritual sort of connection, the sort of processions there are for people at Graceland, the processions that you see for the Pope. And so I'm just really curious about how, when you all were making the film, and then Ralph, you can talk a little bit about your own experience being in the film too, like how you thought about approaching that, because I think there is a way in which this could have been done very differently, but there is such a reverence for everything throughout the film. So I'd love to hear you all talk about that and maybe some of the ritual kind of part of it as well.
Yeah, maybe I will start and say that when I started, I knew very little. And I just had this instinct, having seen this lollipop of the Pope at the Vatican, that I needed to go to Graceland. And I wasn't entirely sure why. And I had read that there was something that happens on the anniversary of his death. And so it seemed like a good time to go. And I read some book, but I was really actually surprised by just how reverent the event itself was. Not everyone, but most people. And I hadn't necessarily anticipated that or expected that, because I start out, and as you can see from the film, I start out really just fascinated by the objects that you talked about. And isn't it kind of funny and strange that we do this with these objects? But then taking part in that candlelight procession myself, as someone who was not allowed to film, and that gave me time to actually hold a candle and be present in that moment, it can't help but move you and put you into this different space that that one would have if you were at the memorial for a loved one, and the people around you are, they really are remembering this person, whether they met Elvis or not. And so that's what made me then think again about, I had been to the Vatican to discover the lollipop, but I hadn't seen the procession yet take place. And so I became really interested in that, and didn't understand it as deeply as Ralph had, because he had been following and photographing and studying religion for many, many years. And so he kind of brought me there. And I was really grateful for his participation in the film, but also in my life, and broadening my own understanding. Ralph, I'd pass it to you.
Thank you. Hi, that was very kind of you, Annie. And I think now is really a great moment for me to say one of the things that I really loved about the film that Annie and Sarah and everyone made is Annie took her time to find her own voice. It's really easy, and it would have been easy for her, and I had the gift of listening to her think about this through a number of years, is what the approach is, how to tell this story of love and reverence and ritual. And Annie found a really unique, true voice, and she struggled through getting through the gravity and the distorting vortex of expectation. And to me, that's the great, wonderful thing. The greatest wonderful thing is I actually get to hear a person tell me through her heart and her mind, her reaction to this ineffable thing that humans have and do, and it seems to be innate within us, but we don't quite know what to do with it. So then we do really bad things with it, apparently. But Annie took it and held it so close to herself, and then with her team was able to let that voice out in this beautiful elegiac film. And that's what I want to say. I mean, I think that's really what we're talking about here. And I think the study of ritual and religion and the human need or the solace that comes from making a pact with something beyond ourselves is incredibly interesting. And I hope to be able to keep working on this the rest of my life. I think Annie's contribution to this is so moving and profoundly altering that we've been given a gift here. So
Thank
there.
you. Thank you. I feel that the gift was mine. So thank you.
Can I
You
comment?
always, you always have that fear with the subjects. You always wonder like, oh my God, are they going to hate it? So it means even more to hear from you. Thank you.
Can I comment on that a little bit too, just from the perspective of like the edit, the post coming in after everything was shot, and this film on the level of being an artist, the thing that really attracted me in the first place is that it reminded me of why I wanted to make films in the first place. Because when she starts the film, she's basically the same age that I was also. And it documents this actual process of sometimes, when you're young, your approach to a certain subject matter may be very surface, you're just curious. There's just curiosity, and there's a real sort of attraction to maybe the kitsch, or maybe, because it seems funny and very, you don't really have a relationship with it yet. But rarely do films take 20 years to be made, and Annie does not advise that. But what we get out of this is Annie's experience of actually growing up and her relationship changing to the material over time. And how many, with films, so much can be done with this material, right? But the way that we look at it over time changes so dramatically. And the voice that we have when we are young, is different than the one that we have when we're reaching middle age. And so for me, it was just really thrilling to also see earlier iterations of the film and sort of see, that perspective reflected back. So, I think she could have made another film in 20 years from now with the same material. I don't think she's going to, but
You can.
Sure. Okay. Sounds good. But you get what I'm saying. It's just like, I think we can look back at the work that we made when we were younger, and we can kind of remember where we're in that headspace, and what our, and how we look at it now is so different. And so to actually like watch a film that's also about process was just so exciting to me. And it really it brought me back to why I make things in the first place. So I feel really, really lucky to have been a part in that way.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm the lucky one. So lucky. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Sarah, I'm really glad that you mentioned process, because that's actually sort of one of my questions that I was thinking about, like watching the film as someone who grew up in Memphis and seeing the bits of I've actually never been to Graceland, but seeing the bits of the areas near Graceland that I know that I've been to, and not really have never seen them in that version, because I was younger when some of those moments were filmed. Made me think a lot about sort of what it's like to return to footage, like you looking through all of these tapes and really coming back to a different version of yourself, who's sort of looking back. And so especially because the book is the film is bookended with sort of you. And I'm really curious about how you sort of reconciled coming back to previous versions of yourself to make this film and sort of chart that, especially in the edit, but also just in the process of coming back to a different version of Annie. So yeah, I'm really curious to hear you talk about that. And Sarah, if you want to share it all sort of about how that informed y'all's collaboration in making the film, love to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, it is crazy, right? When things are in our backyard, we don't go to them. In Memphis, I was talking to Bridget Wheeler at Indie Memphis about we were going to go together for the first time. But as far as tracking the growing up part, I had made many different versions of this film over the years, and as Sarah alluded to, and at some point, I just realized that the film could only be what it was, right? And it was like, I was thinking of it as a child who is like, you can't say you have to be a dentist or whatever it is. It's like at some point the material was speaking and it was what it was. And I realized my job was to see it for what it was and to listen to what it was. And it was a bit of a challenge because the essay film, has all this freedom where you can jump around in thought and time, but the material, it told a very chronological story because you could see me getting more comfortable with the camera and growing in that way. So I think that was the most challenging obstacle to overcome, is just how to somewhat maintain this chronology while being able to also utilize the various thoughts and do both. And so I think it was already at that stage when Sarah came in, where it had found this chronology, but maybe, still had flexibility within there. And Sarah, I felt she was this sort of missionary character who showed up on my door and was like, okay, she's going to take it past the threshold, where it's just like, oh, it's there, but it's not there. And brought with it all of her energy, but also, keen artistic eye and sensibility and humor too. Day, but Sarah's actually a very funny person, and sensitive soul. So I was just very grateful for the opportunity to work on this together, and it felt really easy that way because it was the right fit. So.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, when people start talking about like process and you hear about like some of the choices that they made, you're like, no, we always knew exactly what we were doing. And it was as opposed to like, no, there were some bad choices that were almost made. So, I mean, one thing I remember very specifically is that there was a real struggle with the voice. Who is the voice? Is the voice me? There was a moment where we had written a whole script for a narrator who knew things that Annie, quote unquote, Annie, film voice Annie, didn't know, or was this other perspective. There was this sort of like, Annie is in her mind, but the voiceover can see all sides. And it was very much more Baroque, and it was comical. And I think it was good for us to write that, though, to kind of maybe get at something. What we realized was like, oh, we actually just need to be more simple. Like we're overcomplicating and we need to go more simple. And I think it's really scary. Personal films are really scary because it's kind of like, who cares? Is anyone going to care what I think and like what I have to say? Like, is that enough? And I think sometimes, yeah, you have to, like, when you settle on that, it's kind of a challenge, because I don't think every film should be so personal, or I don't think every film needs to be an essay film. And I don't always think that it works. But I think finding the voice was the challenge. And we went a lot of circuitous routes before we came back to it just being you. So I don't know.
Yeah.
When you almost like forget. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, oh, right, there was the one with the two voices.
Yeah.
It's erased by the current cut. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember the one that was a study of copyright law? And
Yeah.
yeah, going down that path.
Yeah, there was a 2-hour cut, Kayla, that was because that became my favorite part. And so it was so hard. I knew for years then, I knew if I just took it out, it would be an hour and a half and it would just, no one would miss it. But I was just really, really stuck on it. So yeah, some of my favorite scenes are there.
No, she always brings this up, and I'm like, it's my fault.
I didn't.
I was
didn't
like,
do
you
it.
have to cut it.
Well, Ralph brought it up.
That's right. I brought it up innocently, I must say. I didn't realize there was a history here that I was sort of poking.
And
Might
then
have
people,
done it had I known that, but
everyone's always like, well, that sounds really interesting. And I'm like, let's see, I don't know.
it's a beautiful film, not to worry.
Do you want to talk at all about what you were exploring in that copyright section? Because you do kind of mentioned it a little bit in the film, and the film does very clear.
Yeah, sure. So
Um,
oh yeah. Sorry, I think I'm getting you were breaking up a little. I don't know if I am too. So I'm
No,
sorry
you
to
did
interrupt.
fine.
You're
I
good.
think it's Memphis. I think it's Memphis doing it to us.
Yeah. um
Yeah, you're
uh,
good. Sorry.
Oh, no,
That's-
no.
yeah.
So I actually had the chance to interview the billionaire Robert Sillerman, who bought Elvis's intellectual property for $100 million, his company CKX, who also owned the rights to Muhammad Ali and David Beckham, which, it's a very strange thing because it's like, what does that mean? And David Beckham is still alive. And, and how do you own someone's name and image? Well, they are their name and image. And so we had a really, really interesting conversation asking him these questions about, on the one hand, he's saying, yes, he bought these people and Elvis because they are so big and they could mean anything to anyone. But in order to own something, it has to be tightly defined because you can't own an idea. And so that tension of wanting to have it both ways, that it is this big idea, but it is something I can own. To me, there's a lot of conflict there, and it gets at the crux of all of this. And so I also had Larry Lessig, who created Creative Commons, which is that alternative to copyright. And he went through some of the people in the film, because I was following this trail of cease and desist letters. So there was a shopkeeper in London who had this store called Elvisly Yours, which was right across the street from the Sherlock Holmes address and museum, and right next to a Beatles shop. And he was a feisty character who fought, tooth and nail for the right to continue to do what he was doing. The Elvis estate filed a trademark application in the UK. He already had his shop, and he contested it. And he said he was the first one in British law to ever contest a trademark application. And he won because the judges said monopolies should not be so readily created. And so he was, we think of he said, America, the land of the free, not if you're an Elvis fan, believe me. And then, and he says, if you can own Elvis Presley, where does it end? Shakespeare, Jesus Christ. He said, I'm sure if the lawyers could do it, they'd find a way. And so, so those kinds of moments. And there was one other artist too, who has a permanent museum in Athens, in Cornelia, Georgia, Joni Mabe, the Elvis babe, who does go every year if you'd like to meet her to Elvis Week. But she also had received a cease and desist letter for a Elvis hair button that she was selling, and in limited editions. But her work is exhibited in museums all over, and it clearly was art and not commerce, but the estate didn't see it that way. So it began as this trail of cease and desist letters, and it kind of ended with just finding the billionaire owner. And this person I thought was my arch rival, but was sat down with me for a friendly conversation. And then Larry Lessig, who ends up telling me on camera that I could make this film, and he hoped I did, and if I ran into trouble to let him know, which did actually give me that final confidence to release it, because making it was possible, but releasing it was the tricky part.
Yeah. Wow. That's so fascinating. And super interesting in terms of like the lines of the law and like how much of a person you can really own. And I think
Sure.
that really connects to my last question that I wanted to ask, just in terms of like image making and sort of this kind of like fracturing that you're doing throughout the film, where like I'm thinking particularly of two moments. One, when Elvis turns his head back before he answers that question during the press conference. And then also when you're talking about the woman, the poet at Diana, and you talk about how she's a modest but gifted poet, and this reporter will never know that, and how there's kind of a lot of moments like that where you're stopping and taking a second to look at the image making has its limitations, and that it can only go so far, but it's kind of still very much worth the interrogation and the space that the film was sort of giving it. And so I'd kind of love to hear you kind of talk about, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and especially in regards to sort of your own documentation and your own image making, and how you sort of see your relationship to it in regards to that, especially now that the film has been seen by people, and people have their own sort of interactions and relationships, especially to the three sort of figures that your film explores. So
Yeah, that's a great question. It really is what inspired the whole investigation. As I was straight out of college and I was reading Susan Sontag and Walter Benjamin, and I'm thinking a lot about the image and what it means. I took this one class where we would talk about a single still photo for like an hour, and I thought, oh, I didn't know that you could look so closely at an image. And so I was thinking those thoughts when I was at the Vatican, and thinking about what does it mean to reproduce an image ad infinitum, and really to a point that the quality gets degraded and it still has value to its beholder, because it's the face that you love and not the quality of the image. And so it was really quite fascinating to interrogate the images, as you said, like it was the fun of discovery, which I was accustomed to doing in the real world through a camera, but suddenly I could find that at my desktop too. I could slow down the press conference or find this alternate version, like the one you mentioned, where really every single thing I saw showed it the same way. And there just happened to be one news outlet, I think it was Japan, I can't remember, but they didn't cut there. And so it's just like, wait a minute, did I just see that he actually did this funny thing where he was saying my image, what image, with his head. And then other moments where I had a residency at a video art place, and they had all this crazy equipment, and I ended up really just using the space key, just like frame by frame. I wasn't really using any technology at all. And I was watching Diana's footage frame by frame, and to see, her face like get flushed that way, or you just see the sinking moment, which when you play it in real time, you don't perceive it. You feel it, but you don't actually see it happening. But you see these tiny little physical gestures, which, yeah, like you were getting at, breaks this illusion that the image has. And so I was recently teaching, looking again at an Errol Morris, the Thin Blue Line, but the way he interrogates images, right, seeking the truth, it reminded me of can images contain truth? And we're in this world where we're asked to doubt a lot of what we believe. And as you said, yeah, I do think I left the film open-ended so that it can be reinterpreted, and I welcome that also.
yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, just again, I feel like it's that's also what that's what an editor does. She's showing us process again, and from the perspective of an editor, that was also something that's very interesting to me, because I think with documentaries, this idea that I mean, they're manipulated, you know, it's a manipulated image. It's in order for something to be a shortened story, you know, we can't watch the hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage, you know, like that's, nobody wants to do that. But that she gave us the opportunity to think about that, you know, I think, because, you know, I do that on the daily where I'm just watching and you go back and you're like, did I see what I just saw? You know, and what I saw, because I saw it, does it mean, you know, like I'm having a relationship with it, but I also, you know, we also know what happened to Princess Diana. We also, you know, so I just love that the film feels really accessible for some very complicated ideas.
Yeah, Ralph, did you have any thoughts at all?
Oh, it's just everything is wonderful, perfect. I think you did a marvelous job, and yeah, I think this has been fantastic. I think the film stands on its own at this point.
Agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does have those moments do have that quality that remind me a lot of like rewinding VHSs growing up that I
That's great.
don't really have that tangible experience as much anymore. Like, I mean, I can do that, and I do that, you know, on editing softwares and like when you're watching shows, but there's something very tangible about being able to sort of like hear a tape rewind or feel that kind of like button. And I think that's a quality that the film really, really gets at. So yeah, the last sort of things to wrap things up, I'd love to hear just sort of what you all are working on next, where you see this film in particular going next, or if there's other things that you're working on that you want to share.
Well, the film it came out in this weird time that we're living in, and so it has been finding its way, and did a pretty strange release. It didn't really play festivals, you know, it went straight to theaters, and then when they had just opened up, which was exciting. And so we're entering into the educational space right now in colleges and universities, and then hope to, in not too long of a time, get it, make it available for everyone. I think it's interesting that in this June, this Elvis movie is coming out, this Baz Luhrmann movie. So I think that might change the way even I view this movie. So I'm curious to see that and how that plays out. And I think there was something else after. Oh no, I think I'm thinking of the Diana musical that had come out before. But yeah, it's amazing how long distribution actually takes. So I'm also working on a project, but I'm really, truth be told, really working on distribution. There's a project that I started a while ago called In Berlin that takes place in the VR headset. It's a short film about an experience of being there and having one foot in the present and the other traipsing across history. So it's also I invite you inside my head through the headset. And I would love to one day I have actually all this material, all the photographs. So I would love to one day do a book and exhibit some of these things together with the film.
Ralph?
Oh, Sarah, I was hoping you would go next.
I can.
Yeah, I sort of continue my pursuit of the same themes, ritual, religion, at different levels. And there's always 2 or 3 projects, 4 in the queue. I've been working for a very long time on one that's really about possession, dispossession, and imposition, as both cultural and ownership of land goes. It's sort of a historical, I'm using some historical lines on the earth to follow some events that occurred, and really a very different thing for me. There's no humans in my photographs in this series. I'm really sort of trying to photograph extant culture, the culture of the possessors, and the culture of perhaps of the possessors who don't even have any empathy for what they possess. So I think that's really where I'm working now. And I've been working on this one for about 20 years. And I really do hope to finish it someday. So, but yeah, there's no end to things I'm going to be working on. So that's sort of what I'm doing. Now, Sarah, it is you.
Okay. So I'm co-writing a film with the director Cecilia Alderando about her sort of teen coming of age traumas and just the terrors of adolescence. And it's a hybrid documentary. And so we are recreating memories from her adolescence, and she's playing herself, and we're working with teen actors. And when we can, we're inviting other people from the memories to also participate and comment. So it's about what we remember, you know, why we remember certain things, that they just stick with us, details that we forget, you know, and what those details tell us. And it's also, my contribution is that I've seen like every teen movie. So all of the reenactments are influenced and inspired by teen genres. So one moment will be very much in the like teen slasher, you know, milieu, one will, you know, anyways. So it's a tragic comedy, I guess, which is sort of my favorite genre. And hopefully we're all shot at this point, and hopefully it'll be out maybe next year this time. So stay tuned. Yeah. And I'm also in it. So
Can't wait.
Wow, all of that sounds really incredible, fascinating, and so I can't wait to see and read all of those things. I just want to say thank you again for all of your time, and thank you for sharing the work with us. I'm so glad that we get to present it at the festival.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Kayla. It's so great to
Thank you.
talk to you.
It's so nice to see you guys. Sorry.
Yeah, I know.
Kayla.
It's also an opportunity to see each other. And I feel like I almost escaped quarantine through the portal.
I'm so
Thanks.
glad. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank
Yes,
you.
bye.
Thank you. I know you're hopping on to like 80 next one. So, right, Kayla?
Yeah.
Take care of yourselves.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Kayla. Fantastic.
Bye. Thank you so much.